Do it their wilt shall be the whole of the law.
Love is the law, love under will.
Thank you all for coming to today's class on Little Essays Toward Truth. Today we are working on mastery. So you may wonder what's up with the octopus/spider guy. And when I first typed in the word master to see what kind of graphics my graphics subscription would give me, I got construction guys. So I rolled with it. So that is our background theme today, will be construction dudes. If you are not a current member of Sekhet Maat, we would definitely appreciate your contribution of $10 or whatever you can afford to pay. Also, if you are joining us by YouTube, if you head to our website, which is printed on this handy dandy slide here, like right there in the corner, you will be able to subscribe to our mailing list to find out about upcoming classes and find out some more information about the work that it is we do at Sekhet Maat. All right, so here are your usual warnings. I'm not an expert, except when I am an expert. I definitely am not a PowerPoint expert. That should be obvious really fast. So sorry about all of that. I don't speak for Sekhet Maat. I'm not teaching dogma. I don't speak for the O.T.O or the AA or the CIA or MI5 or anybody else that can be spoken of in initials. You may disagree with some of my conclusions or some of the material that I thought was relevant, and that's awesome. You are definitely free to disagree and to be offended if you so choose. But just remember, your mileage may vary, and we are all here to have a fun discussion and to play nice. Do not taunt Happy Fun Ball. There I am showing my age. All right, so just a quick roadmap. We are now at essay number 8 of 16. If you missed the first 7, 5 of them were recorded. One of them is pre-exist recording, so I will likely record that one at the end in July of next year. And one of them I pushed the wrong button, so sorry about that. There's no wonder recording. So first, as usual, I'd like to talk about what the hell mastery is. Crowley could have chosen any word he wanted to title this essay, or any of these essays, and he chose mastery. Mastery is not a word that I find myself using in everyday conversation, but it's related to the word master. So I thought I'd poke around and see, what does master mean? Because it's a word that we see all the time, right? Like, for example, you might wonder what Depeche Mode, Bob Dylan, Van Morrison, ZZ Top, Def Leppard, Pearl Jam, Metallica, and Stevie Wonder have in common. And it is that all of them released a song that has the title, or that has the word master or masters in the title. I was actually surprised at how many there were. And if you look at these titles, most of them have the same concept of master. So you have something outside of you as my master or the master. Satan is the master, love is the master, my Lord and master, a dog and his master. You have some that are a relationship, like master and servant, master of puppets, and you have some that indicate that there's mastery over something. Arguably, master of puppets is like that, and master over puppetry, but also master blaster, masters of war, and microphone master, just, for the other kids. We also have a lot of TV shows that are about masters, or that have the word master in their title. And I thought this was kind of interesting. When I looked at them, with the exception of 1 or 2 of these shows, almost all of them are some kind of competition. Mastermind, for example, is a game show. Master Chef is a cooking show that's a competition. Master Builders is also, from what I understand, a competition show. Lego Masters, Ink Master. So these are about mastery over a subject. And as long as I was going to talk about master and television, again, showing my age, I just couldn't resist throwing in that episode from Seinfeld about being the master of your domain. And if you're too young to know what that is, go look it up on YouTube and don't let your mom know I told you. So I also looked at some quotes on mastery. I really liked the first one because even though it's about swimming, which is something I'm not really into, it says, swimming has educational value, mental, moral, and physical, in giving you a sense of mastery over an element. So even though this quote is not from a mystical or occult context, the concept of mastery over an element is one that we're familiar with as magicians. Bonus nerd points to anyone who knows off the top of their head who Robert Lord Baden-Powell is. What you got, Nick? You're on mute, but I think you're saying he founded the Boy Scouts of America.
Yes, and took lots and lots and lots of photographs of these young boys in their swimming trunks and less.
Didn't he now? Yes. So there are lots of other quotes here. I found lots of quotes about mastering and being a master and mastery from artists. I thought the one by Goethe was particularly interesting because of what the subject of these essays are, right? The quote is, "Mastery passes often for egotism." And remember that in Little Essays Toward Truth, we started with an essay by Crowley talking about the different parts of the soul of man as they correspond to the tree of life. And the ego is sort of inside the ruach, which is the part of the tree that we live in, right? Below the abyss, centered on Tiferet, with the four Sephiroth that are immediately around it as kind of like the arms and legs of the Tiferet, right? So the idea that mastery is somehow related to egotism, I thought was kind of interesting. So your mileage may vary. We'll see what you come up with as we read the essay. Something else I found interesting is that the word mastery and the word master did not come into the English language the same way, according to the powers that be, the etymology folks at Oxford Languages. Mastery is something that we got from Old French. It went from an Old French word for master through Old French to Middle English, which means that you can thank the Norman invasion and the conquest of England by the French for the word mastery. But interestingly, the word master comes directly from Latin to English, but also directly from Latin to Old French. So we have the idea of magister, which if you've looked at the AA system or any of Crowley's essays, you'll know that Magister Templi is the name used in the system of the Golden Dawn and the AA for a master of the temple. So it's a word that we kept. In Old English, it was magister. In Old French, it was maistre mestre. I don't have a good French accent. Don't quote me on that. But it came from both Old English and Old French at the same time to master. So Old English had the word master before it got the word mastery, if that makes sense. Or it came directly from Latin as opposed to having to come from another language. So I just thought that was kind of neat. So mastery in the Oxford English Dictionary, which might as well be the Bible as far as I'm concerned, has several different definitions. These are not necessarily direct quotes. But the first one, the state or condition of being master. Okay, well, what is that? Mastery is superiority or ascendancy in competition or strife. Now, I don't know about you, but the definitions in a dictionary go from most common usage, allegedly, to less common usage, with the obsolete ones usually being tucked underneath one or two definitions or being sub-definitions of more common usage. My initial concept, when you say mastery to me, I don't think of the state or condition of being a master, and I certainly don't think about ascendancy in strife. So my initial thought was something more along the lines of the third definition, which is to have mastery over something. I've mastered, I have mastery over my domain. I have mastery over playing an instrument, or mastery over a skill set like juggling. It's also been used to refer to that skill or knowledge itself. So, for example, instead of saying I have mastery over juggling, to refer to juggling as a mastery. What are your masteries? Juggling, somersaults, crappy PowerPoint slides, I also thought that it was interesting that the very last of the 7 definitions was an intellectual command over a subject of study. And perhaps this is because I spent so much time in school, but I think of someone who has mastery over something as being extremely well studied and well practiced. So if if I think of you as having mastery over biology, you're probably somebody who spent a lot of time in the lab, not just doing theoretical things. And similarly, I think if you have mastery over, say, the performance of the star ruby, it's something that you've spent a lot of time working on and are generally pretty badass at doing. So moving on to the word master. Master as a noun takes up 7 pages in the OED. That's a lot of real estate. The definitions are generally subdivided into 5 categories, with the 5th category being kind of like special combo words that we're just going to ignore for today. First primary definition, the first set of primary definitions, is a man having control or authority. Well, let me tell you, that just made me so sad because I guess I'm never going to be a master. Anyway, but if you look at these definitions, all of these definitions of master as a man having control or authority all talk about having mastery or control or authority over something external. So the first definition talks about control over the action of another or others. In the nautical context, the master has control of the ship. In the third definition, it's employing someone else, being the master of a servant or an apprentice, right? Or an owner of something. These are all external to the individual. So master and mastery seem to be associated with me as the wannabe master, because obviously I'm not a man, exercising control over things external in my world. The second definition of master, or the second set of definitions, comes under the heading of a teacher or one who is qualified to teach. So you think of the older usage of the term schoolmaster. It's also used to apply to someone, he whose disciple one is. So if I am the disciple of someone, that person is a master, or the master, or my master. It's a similar type of teacher-student relationship, although it seems to me to show up more often in religion, and perhaps that's because I'm used to seeing Christ referred to as the master or master teacher or my Lord and master or something along those lines. All right, third set of definitions. I'm sorry, the teacher definitions, they just keep coming. Originally a workman qualified by training and experience to teach apprentices and carry on his trade on his own account, like a master mason, hence the theme of this week's slides. It can also be used as a predicate with the sense of highly skilled. So you could be a master craftsman or a master poker player or a master arborist or something else like that. And I thought it was interesting that chess was specifically mentioned. There's a system in chess where you get points and you can become a chess master, but there are also masters in bridge that achieve their mastery status about the same way as you do in chess, not mentioned anywhere in this definition. And there are also masters athletes, which generally is the word master is sort of a nice word for old person. So once you hit 40, you stop racing in the open divisions, you are racing in the masters division. All right, third definition is as a specific title of office. So for example, within US Grand Lodge, the Supreme and Holy King of our country is referred to as the Grand Master, and he is the Grand Master of the United States. There are also, the word master also appears in designations of other types of job titles where someone is taking care of something, controlling it. They may be in charge of making repairs and making sure that it's taken care of, like the master of accounts. And in the fourth definition as a noun, the fourth set of definitions, it is a title of rank or accomplishment. So in the definition 21, it's used as a term of respect or politeness. Okay, a little old-fashioned for my taste, but all right. In 22, for example, a title prefixed to the name or designation of a man. Think about Master Bruce in the Batman old television series, right? It was used early, instead of calling young men Mr., they were referred to as Master. And apparently, if you are the heir apparent of a Scottish peerage, you also get to be the master. I'm pretty sure that means that no women are heir apparent of any Scottish peerages, which also makes me sad. Let's talk about master as a verb. So the definition for master as a verb, unlike the definition for master as a noun, only took part of one page. And remember, master combining the two took about 7 pages. So the idea that master as a verb fit all on one page and all of the rest was master as a noun tells you something about the way that we tend to use the word master, or the way that it has historically been used to this point. So looking at the first one, to master is to get the better of in any contest or struggle, to overcome or defeat. And this goes back to that definition of master as a noun as somebody who has, superior conquest in strife kind of thing going on. To reduce to subjection or compel to obey, to break or tame an animal is to master it. In dyeing and tanning, to temper something is to season it or modify it. Hides were mastered by application of certain substances to preserve them, keep them from rotting, make them soft, blah, blah, blah. I also like number 6, to have at one's disposal, to own or possess. I'm the master of this maison, right? I'm the master of whatever, like in terms of resources and things that you have. But this is a verb of, so I master this house, right? I have mastery of this house, to master this house. All right. Are you ready for an essay? I hope so. So going with today's theme of construction, all of these little pipe designs will indicate the slides where I have only Crowley's words, exactly Crowley's words, and not excessive other commentary. So without further ado, Nick, will you take our first slide, please?
The aim of him who would be master is single. Men call it personal ambition. That is, he wants his universe to be as vast and his control of it as perfect as possible. Few fail to understand this aim, but many fail in the formulation of their campaign to attain it. Some, for instance, fill their purse with fairy gold, which when they try to use it is found to be dead leaves. Others attempt to rule the universe of another, not seeing that they cannot even take true cognizance thereof.
So here we have 2 examples of ways that you can fail in your attempt to become a master. One is to use a bad method on your own attempt at mastering your own universe. Can anyone explain to me the fairy gold reference? All right. Just thought I'd put it out there in case there's some well-known story that I don't actually know about. Go ahead, Nick.
It's the idea that it is a legend of being able to trick a fairy into giving, kind of like a leprechaun story, trick a fairy into giving you their gold or their treasure, but then actually they double cross you. And later on you find out, oh, it's just dead leaves.
Yeah.
They're in your pocket.
Exactly. Fairies are known to be tricky, so don't try to trick a trickster. Just to cliff note it, we're talking about the goal of a master, personal ambition. Really, there are 2 parts. One is to make your universe as vast as possible, and the other is to control that universe as perfectly as you can. This is the easy part, but I'm laying it out there because it's about to take a left turn or a right turn or something. Wendy, will you take this one, please?
The proper method of extending one's universe, besides the conventional apparatus of material science, is tripartite: evocation, invocation, and vision. Control is a matter of theoretical and practical acquaintance with the magical formulae, but notably also of self-discipline. The ground is to be consolidated and all contradictions resolved in higher harmonies by various trances.
Notice, even though we're talking about mastery, one of the very first things Crowley manages to throw in there as a tool is self-discipline. So again, we have 2 goals. Make the universe as big as possible, master it as well as we can. And Crowley tells us to use 2 things to make it as fast as possible. 1, science. Remember, we have the method of science, the aim of religion. All right. And then he gives us this 3-part formula of evocation, invocation, and vision. So I've always kind of wondered, since a lot of people use evocation and invocation interchangeably, if that was just me. So I did a quick online dictionary search. And evocation covers the act of bringing or recalling a feeling, memory, or image to your conscious mind, but is also the action of invoking a spirit or deity. So in common modern usage, at least, evocation can also be invocation. Invocation, I picked what they called the occult definition, is the summoning of a deity or the supernatural. Does anyone have any thoughts about evocation versus invocation? I didn't have a lot of time to dig super deep on Crowley's thoughts on these 2.
I do.
Please share.
As I've understood it, as it's commonly used, as I see it, evocation is the act of summoning a spirit, say, into physical presence in front of you. And generally, like the Goetia, for example, would be evocation. And you usually have a barrier between you and the spirit. You're taking precautions. Invocation is actually invoking the deity or spirit or angel into yourself. And so there is no over there. It's actually, you're actually doing that. And that would also include, I think, voodoo, for example. When voodoo practitioners, they allow themselves to become possessed, that would be invocation. And that's, as I understand it, would be the difference.
That works. So the way I eventually resolved this in my own head was that setting aside Goetia for a moment, invoking something is like, hey, by the authority of this, or I am a priest of that, or something along those lines. Whereas invocation is actually to call that thing here now, right? Because we have the prefix, both of these words have the root word vocare from Latin, which means to call. And then in, we have kind of to call in, right? Whereas the evocation isn't really so much a calling in as a pointing to, right? Then as far as vision goes, Crowley's mentioned several visions so far in Little Essays Toward Truth, right? We have the vision of the machinery of the universe, for example. Vision was also mentioned in Beatitude. But just as your basic, boring definition, it's the ability to see something or the ability to think about or plan the future with imagination or wisdom. So these three things are part of how we are going to make the universe as vast as possible. Any commentary on why these three things or how any of them makes your universe more vast?
I just want to throw in there that I think imagination is highly underrated. And I think imagination actually pulls the reset to what's possible. That's it.
Sure. It's the kind of the equivalent of the Sanskrit idea that if you can describe a thing in words, then it exists. So if you can think it up in your mind, it exists, and you've expanded the realm of possibility. All right. Let's have, then the second goal, right, to control your universe as perfectly as possible. He tells us, okay, magical formula and various trances. Up to this point in Little Essays Toward Truth, we've only had two magical formulae mentioned specifically and called magical formulae. One is in the memory essay. Crowley refers to a general formula comprehensive of universal experience without reference to the ego. And the capitals are Crowley's, not mine. Crowley's also specifically mentioned the Tetragrammaton, which is a known magical formula that we work with quite frequently in Thelema. As far as trances, we've discussed how each of the various points on the Tree of Life, or each of the Sephiroth, has a spiritual experience associated with it, and some of those are referred to as trances. And in fact, there's an essay on trance, but we're not there yet. So to date, we've talked about the trance of sorrow and also the trance of wonder. All right, Jeff, you're up.
So much indeed is obvious to superficial consideration. Strange then that so few magicians take the further step of inquiry as to the availability of the instrument. Short-sighted selfishness, good sooth, to take for granted that oneself is sure to find its proper medium to hand for its next adventure. Here the magical memory is a virtue marvelous to correct perspective, for how often in the past has one's life been all but sheer failure from the mere lack of proper means of self-expression? And who among us can be seriously satisfied today knowing what we do with even the most perfect human instrument?
I was like, wait, what? So to break this one down, right? Short-sightedness, easy enough to say, is selfishness. I took this to mean we sort of assume we're just going to stumble into whatever it is we need to move forward. We're just going to find the medium at hand. No worries here. And the way the magical memory corrects that perspective is to have you look back. Remember, we did a whole essay on memory. That, failure due to lack of means of proper self-expression. And also, there's always somewhere to go with your instrument, whether you're thinking of your physical body or your ego, mind, spirit, other faculty. So when he's talking about this piece about, the magical memory, it made me think of the powers of the Sphinx, right? To know, to will, to dare, to keep silent, and to those Crowley would add to go. So it's not wait for your will to happen is the law. Like, just hang, it'll come to you. But there seems to me to be an implication here that in order to accomplish this task of mastery, of expanding your universe and coming to, be on top of it as much as is humanly possible, you actually have to go do stuff. Comments, thoughts, disagreements? All right, Nick, you're up.
It is then no more than simple good sense for the magus to formulate his general political aim in some such terms as these: to secure the greatest possible freedom of self-expression for the greatest possible number of points of view, of which issue the practical aspect may be phrased as follows: to improve the human race in every conceivable way, so as to have available for service the greatest possible variety of the best instruments imaginable.
The political aim of the magus is to secure the greatest possible freedom of self-expression for the greatest possible number of points of view. This sounds to me a lot like the law of Thelema, right? Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. And it's not just law for me, it's law for you too, even if I don't like your point of view. If you are interested in contemplating this idea further, take a look at Liber Oz and what it is you have the right to do and how many of those relate to freedom of self-expression in some way. So then we get a rephrase. Okay, so we have a general political aim, which Crowley then refers to as the practical aspect, to improve the human race in every conceivable way, so as to have available for service the greatest possible variety of the best instruments imaginable. What is up with that?
So this is like free market economics.
Roll with it.
I mean, it is. It just is. It's throw everything out there on the market, and the best ideas, the best product will rise to the top.
I think too. I think too. He's trying to at least with here and what's to follow. I think he's trying to give some sort of a rational basis that we can chew on to actually use as justification to be a do-gooder. I mean, he almost follows this up with sort of mocking do-gooders as that's ridiculous. But if you look at it as I'm going to improve other people so that I have relations as brothers with improved people, I can come at it from a selfish point of view. And maybe if I'm a jerk, I can find justification to do that.
So how do I improve other people?
Well, you start
Assist
by
them with
improving
resource.
yourself.
I'm sorry, Wendy?
I mean, to improve other people, I guess you'd have to start by improving oneself.
Right? Regime change starts at home, you guys.
Glancing at my book at what's coming next.
Well, here, I'll just bring that up. All right. So we talked about improving the human race in every conceivable way. Nick, take us away. And then you can comment.
To improve the human race in every conceivable way, so as to have available for service the greatest possible variety of the best instruments imaginable. And this is the rational justification of the apparently imbecile and too often sentimental hypocritical aphorism, love all beings, serve mankind. That is, upon the political plane, for also these two phrases contain one, the magical formula which is the key alike of invocation and of trance; two, the implicit injunction to make clear the way of the magician through the heavens by right ordering of every star. The word serve is indeed misleading and objectionable. It implies a false and despicable attitude. The relation between men should be the brotherly respect which obtains between noble strangers. The idea of service is either true and humiliating or false and arrogant.
Since you brought it up, you have license to comment if you'd like to expound first.
I think it comes down, frankly, what he's saying here about noble strangers. This really is stay the hell out of each other's way. This really is do your will, allow others to do their will. It is not your job to save and correct your fellow beings, but rather to secure their freedom, to make way their options. I mean, this makes me think of a situation I had when I was the only lawyer in a small town. And there was a group protesting a religious view during a large event, and a member of my church, and we were both part of the view being picketed, turned to me and said, can't we do something about that? To stop this group picketing. And I looked at her and said, I think this is beautiful. It tells me the Constitution is working. It was funny to watch her jaw drop, but she actually got the point eventually. So I think that's really, in essence, what he's saying. It becomes our responsibility not to narrow the options and play nanny, but actually to preserve options and to preserve one another's freedom of those choices, no matter how despicable we may find some of those choices.
I don't know. I think I agree with that. But I think he's also taking swipes at do-gooders. I'm going to kind of come back to that. I think he's saying, it's almost like a festering boil when you have somebody out there who's trying to actually gain power and create mischief by coming across, well, Mother Teresa, sorry if that offends anybody, but it's like, I think he's taking a swipe at the real damage that the false kind of doing good and the false kind of service can really happen. And he's saying there is a way, there is something that serve all can mean something actual. It can mean lifting each other up and going after and creating better people around you so that you have better people to be around. So I do think, I do agree, Nick, that it's staying the hell out of everybody's way. But I also think it's like an action formula that kind of comes against, I think at that time was a growing sense of altruism of the day. That it's like, I think he would have really liked Mark Twain and kind of said, that's ridiculous.
Anyone else?
Yeah, like on the one hand, I agree with this in the sense that if someone's lighting up a cigarette, it's not my job to slap it out of their hands and go, oh, you're hurting your lungs. It's like, they have every right to do that. And like, but, what about other situations where someone is attacking somebody else? Do we just go, well, they're free to do that? What if the other person can't help themselves or, can't necessarily? It would just, I think there's a gray area.
Well, if we're trying to have available for service the greatest possible variety of the best instruments imaginable, we're probably not going to be good with people like whipping out guns and smiting folks on the street, because we need the other opinions to hang out with us.
Yeah, he does say here to make clear the way of the magician through the heavens by right ordering of every star. That does certainly imply the removal of injustice. It does imply the preservation of freedom for all.
So here's the bonus round question. When I read love all beings, serve mankind, can anybody guess what is the very first thing I thought of? It's not Thelema related at all.
The Twilight Zone episode of the space aliens of their cookbook.
So close. So close. That was the second thing I thought of. The Dr. Bronner's soap label. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Dr. Bronner's. It's got this big I should have had the bottle in hand so I can hold it up and show you what the bottle looks like. But it has this big like screed printed on it, love all beings, serve mankind, be good to your neighbor, do all the right things, recycle stuff, save the environment. And so I wondered what Crowley's take on the Dr. Bronner soap label would be, because it has so many of these kind of little sentimental, like do-gooder kind of slogans on it, which can either be taken seriously, like, yes, save the environment, I'm doing all the things, to like, well, I recycle my shampoo bottles, but I'm not giving up my car. Which I'm not criticizing, by the way, because that's totally where I am. I'm not giving up my car.
I think that's an interesting point, because you compare that, for example, since we're naming names, compare that to Penzeys Spices.
Yeah.
Which is very much a do good, but at the same time calling out what the head of the company sees as evil.
Mm-hmm.
Just no punches, no pulling punches about that.
For those not familiar with Penzeys, they have bumper stickers that say things like, save the world, cook dinner tonight, and be kind to people, feed them good food. Yeah. But if you are on their mailing list, Bill Penzey is not shy about saying he had definite opinions on this current federal administration and was not afraid to just say, this happened and that's just not acceptable in my world. And I hope that you're with me. And like, we're going to, celebrate freedom, and this is how we're going to do it. And this is what real freedom looks like. And it has to be for everybody. And so he's got that kind of balance between the, the cheeky little like bumper sticker sayings, right? Be nice. And the, I'm not afraid to use my platform, even though I know I'm going to alienate at this point literally half the country.
Yeah. And gee, thank you for your letter saying you'll never buy from me again. Bye.
So we pretty well killed this part to death. So let's go on to the next slide. Wendy, will you take this one, please?
Okay. The most common and fatal pitfall which menaces the man who has begun to extend his universe beyond the world of sense perception is called the confusion of the planes. To him who realizes the all one and knows that to distinguish between any two things is the basic error, it must seem natural and even right to perform what seems perforce acts of love between incongruous ideas. He has the key of languages. Why then should not he, the Englishman, avail himself of it to speak in Hebrew without learning it? The same problem offers itself daily in a myriad subtle shapes. Command these stones to become bread. Throw thyself down from the pinnacle of the temple. As is written, he shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. These last four words throw light upon the fog of Choronzon. Restriction be unto him in the name of Babylon. For his ways are the ways of nature, who hath appointed between the planes a well-ordered relation. To deform this device is not, and cannot be, thy way. The act of love so seeming is a false gesture, for such love is not love under will.
So I added a break here because this is like the biggest run-on paragraph ever, but he's also packed a lot of stuff into what's going on here. So let's start with confusion of the planes. Now he doesn't give us a good definition of what that is, right? He says it's something about, okay, I've seen the all one. I know that making distinctions between two things is a basic error, so I want to unite all these incongruous things. Now, remember that in the beginning of the first essay, Crowley is talking about the constitution of man, and he divides man's parts into two planes. The first, or two groups, I should say, the real and the unreal, right? So the top three Sephiroth of the Tree of Life are the parts that I've been referring to as the little God spark. That's the kind of individual God spark, the Yakida. The part of Yakida that's like, oh, it might be interesting to go, figure something out or to go explore something, and that's the Chia. And then the part of the supernals that is like, or the part of the soul that is like, and now I'm going to figure out how to do it, right? The Neshama seated in Bina that's about to kick you into incarnation over the cross of the abyss. And so those three supernals represent what's real. And I've seen that referred to in other places as the theoretical or the absolute or the above the abyss. And then the other sort of plane is the self we know, like the meat suit, the practical, like when I go do stuff, how do I do it? What is manifest? Like the things I can point to and the things that are below the abyss. And those are the parts of the soul Crowley refers to as the ruach, which is centered in Tiferet. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but also in another essay. The nephesh, which is kind of the driving hindbrain behind the ruach. And it turns out the meat suit has a name, and the name of the meat suit is the goof. So there you have it, the goof. So in Confessions, Crowley writes about confusion of the planes in a couple of different ways. I liked this quote. One is inclined to say, now that I am becoming holy, I find that I dislike the idea of eating. Ergo, by which I think he meant ergo, eating is unholy, and it will help me to become still holier if I resolutely suppress the squeals of appetite. And so you have here an idea of two things, one that's on the higher plane, right? Like God ain't got no need for food, right? And if I'm a God, why am I eating? But then you have the reality, the practical, like what I'm doing here on this earth, and that is that my stomach is going to growl and my body will not function properly as my vehicle on this incarnation if I don't put food in it. So Crowley comments, such, I believe, is the basis of much of the fantastic morality which has muddled mystical teaching throughout history. I do not think that straightforward a priori considerations would have carried unquestioning conviction in the absence of apparent confirmation of their hypotheses. This confusion of the planes is, in my opinion, the chief cause of the failure to attain. It is constantly cropping up in all sorts of connections. So the idea that you get that glimpse of, oh, this is what it's like above the abyss. I got that tiny little like inkling of a sliver. So I need to make all these, or I need to do that down here. So it's all the same. But remember, the rules don't work the same way above the abyss as they do below the abyss, right? Otherwise, we'd all just run around reading each other's thoughts, and we wouldn't recognize each other. We would all be one thing and be like, yeah, cool. So these references to commanding stones to be loaves of bread and throwing yourself down from the spire, I was like, oh man, that sounds vaguely familiar. So I whipped out the Darby Bible and just threw in stones, loaves of bread. And this is the basic outline of the story, is that the devil is tempting Jesus and has taken him up onto, well, first he starts out, Jesus goes to fast, right? So he's really hungry. 40 days and 40 nights, just like the flood. 40 is a good number. Go to your gematria outside the scope of this. So it starts out, Jesus is in the wilderness. He's been fasting. So dude, he's hungry. And the devil shows up and says, hey man, you're God's son. Like, you can make yourself some food. And Jesus is like, yeah, that's not how this game works, right? Like, that power doesn't belong to this world. It's over there. Like, that would be misuse. No bueno. And then the devil says, hey man, you're on the top of the temple, and if you're really the son of God, you could just jump down and the angels are going to come take care of you. And again, Jesus is like, yeah, that's not how that works. See, I could do that, but that's the rule for up there, and I'm currently living in this meat suit down here, so that's not how these things go, right? You don't use that miraculous power in service of myself. Like that, those aren't the rules of engagement that I've agreed to be here on this incarnation. So this is a pitfall, according to Crowley, right? Confusion of the planes. Command the stones to become bread. All right, blah, blah, blah. So we get down to, he shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. Now, what are all thy ways of, in this case, the Son of God, or the reference that it's making? Crowley says they are the ways of nature. And there's a reason, right? There's a well-ordered appointment. We have a device that separates the above from the below. And so trying to unite the two can't be thy way, like the way of God, the way of the universe, whatever you want to call the thing above the top of all the trees that we're all a little tiny spark of, right? So trying to, I'm hungry, I'm going to turn those stones into bread, isn't the rules of engagement for here. Does that make sense? Does anyone think I've missed the mark or have a better way to explain it, or different ideas they'd like to share? My cat's been fed, by the way, so if you hear him complaining, it's not because he's contributing to the conversation in a meaningful way. All right, well, we'll move on then. Jeff, will you take this one, please?
Be thou well aware, O thou who seekest to attain to mastery of doing aught miraculous, the surest sign of the master is this, that he is a man of like passions with his fellows. He does indeed transcend them all and turn them all to perfections, but he does not without suppression, for everything that lives is holy, or distortion, for every form is a true symbol of substance, or confusion, for admixture is hatred as union is love. Initiation means the journey inwards. Nothing is changed or can be changed, but all is truly understood with every step. The Magus of the gods, with his one word that seems to overturn the chariot of mankind in ruin, does not in fact destroy or even alter anything. He simply furnishes a new mode of applying existing energy to establish forms.
So everyone's on board with the whole, don't turn the rocks into bread business, right? The master is not suppressing, distorting, or confusing. And this reference to an admixture as hatred, whereas union is love, I thought was really interesting because we don't tend to use the word admixture at all, ever. But also because it's making the difference between, say, in chemistry, you can have things that are mixed together that don't react, or you can have things that you've latched on to each other and united to make a compound. So you can think of it a little bit like the difference between flour and chocolate chips. I can put them together and stir them up so the chocolate chips are in the flour, but I can also still pick out all of the chocolate chips. There's not a true union going on. Whereas if I add the other ingredients and throw them in the oven, you can no longer pick out the chocolate chips as they were because they have literally melted into the substance around them and become part of that united object that is now the chocolate chip cookie. All right, the initiation being the journey inwards is referenced back to, Crowley's made some reference to this in several of the prior essays. I love that he says it's trulier understood. That's really a word, he's not making it up. And when he refers to the magus of the gods, you can look at who some of our Gnostic saints are and look to Crowley's essays on Krishna and Muhammad for the magicians and their word that changed the aeon. Crowley, of course, being the master Therion who proclaimed the law of Thelema as the overturning the chariot of mankind. He's not destroying or altering anything, right? In declaring we have a new aeon, the aeon of the crowned and conquering child, Crowley hasn't changed the universe or burned it all down. He's just given us a new way to apply what already existed to what already existed. And he gives us an example because, Crowley's like me. He likes examples. So, Nick.
The invention of electric machines has in no way interfered with matter or motion. It has only helped us to get rid of certain aspects of the illusion of time and space, and so brought the most intelligent minds to the threshold of the magical and mystical doctrine. They have been forced to imagine the possibility of the perception of the universe as it is, freed of conditions. That is, they have been given a glimpse of the nature of the attainment of mastery, and it is surely but a little step to take for the leaders of natural science, mathematics, their guiding star, that they should understand the compelling necessity of the great work and apply themselves to its achievement.
Who's got some comment on this? Because I think this part's fascinating. Jeff, you got nothing on mathematics as the guiding star, compelling the necessity of the great work?
Nothing yet, but I'm thinking I'll come up with something.
All right. So remember, when Crowley's writing, we're moving into the age of industry, or we're fully, I guess, in the age of industry. And so the rules that govern the universe haven't changed, right? The law of matter is the same. You can't create it or destroy it. The laws of motion are the same, right? Inertia still exists, all that kind of stuff. But now that we have these electric machines, we're taking energy that already existed and using it in a different way on forms that already existed. So this is an example of what mastery looks like, right? It's a new way of taking the energy that you've already got and applying it to the stuff that's already around you. So then we got to talk about obstacles. Wendy, let's talk about obstacles.
Here are the great obstacles of these. Firstly, the misunderstanding of self And secondly, the resistance of the rational mind against its own conclusions. Men must cast off these two restrictions. They must begin to realize that self is hidden behind and independent of the mental and material instrument in which they apprehend their point of view. Then they must seek an instrument other than that which insists, with every single observation, on impressing on them what is merely its own most hateful flaw and error, the idea of duality.
We have two great obstacles. One is the misunderstanding of self. Basically, the self that you know is not your real self. Right? Riffing on the Tao that can be spoken is not the true Tao. The self that you know is your ruach and your goof and your nefesh, but the rest of you is on the other side of the abyss, right? The rest of you is that part that is not incarnated, that you don't currently have touch with. That's the real thing. You're down here in the unreal, as Crowley called it. Second is the rational mind insisting on duality. And Crowley has written a whole bunch of stuff on duality, so I just picked out 4 quotes to illustrate. So in Liber Abba, or book 4, which we refer to as the big blue brick because it's big and blue and brick-like, when Crowley's talking about the construction of magical tools, in the discussion of the pantacle, or the pentacle, he says the duality of consciousness is also sometimes represented on the pantacle. So there is a perception of duality of consciousness, right? The consciousness I know and can talk and can think, and then there's some other consciousness that's beyond that, the sort of God consciousness bit, or even think about your subconscious or unconsciousness. In Little Essays Toward Truth Wonder, which we've already gone through, Crowley talked about disengaging from the universe as a way to overcome the trance of sorrow, right? And he said that's to stand aloof, but that is to affirm duality, which is itself the root of sorrow. To obtain the highest, one must unite oneself with all things, partake of all as a true sacrament. And this motion leads to the trance of wonder. So in the wonder essay, coming to this duality topic, Crowley's kind of warning us before we get to this point about mastery that, hey, you've got to get over the idea that you're separate from all these things. Like, yeah, it's a bummer and it's not forever and it's impermanent, right? That Buddhist influence of none of this is real and we're all going somewhere else later, or we're all going to exist in a different way, maybe not go somewhere else. But that in order to do your job, to develop as a spiritual being and climb your way up that tree, you can't be like, yeah, man, it's all fake, I'm not partaking. The world is a sumptuous buffet. You're supposed to dive in and unite with all of it as a sacrament that will help you to evolve. Also in Liber Abba, when Crowley's talking about the limbs of yoga, Crowley talks about dhyana, or jhana. It's sometimes called jhana with an H. There's a union of the ego and the non-ego. Duality in any form is abolished. This is the limb of yoga that Patanjali refers to as jhana, which is also the sort of concentration and focus. In several other places, Crowley has described it as the result of meditating on an object or a God form such that you feel or you experience a melding of you with the thing on which you are meditating. And finally, in Liber Arita, there's a quote that the epistemists has no consciousness of any kind involving duality, for in him all is accomplished. As it is written, beyond the word and the fool, yea, beyond the word and the fool. Thoughts on the obstacles? Well, we got some more essay. Jeff, take it away.
The Aeon of Horus is here, and its first flower may well be this, that freed of the obsession of the doom of the ego and death, and of the limitation of the mind by reason, the best men again set out with eager eyes upon the path of the wise, the mountain track of the goat, and then the untrodden ridge that leads to the ice-gleaming pinnacles of mastery.
Notice how Crowley's found a way to work one of his favorite hobbies, mountaineering, into the little essays. So I hit the end in this flowery language and was like, wait, what did we just read? So I made a recap. Only I have to move you guys over. So to recap, the master is personal ambition. You're going to make your universe as vast as possible and make control of your universe as perfect as possible. You have evocation, invocation, and vision as tools to expand your universe. You have theoretical and practical acquaintance with magical formula, but also self-discipline and consolidation of everything by various trances. Those are your tools for making your universe as perfect as possible. Many fail. Why? A few magicians take the further step of inquiry as to the availability of the instrument. They're short-sighted and just assume that whatever they need is going to fall into their laps, essentially. Your magical memory, and remember there's a whole essay on this, and I think that one even got recorded, can give you some perspective. So go look there as a tool to avoid that short-sighted, oh, I just have to sit around and life's going to happen. The aim of the magus is to secure the greatest possible freedom of self-expression for the greatest possible number of points of view. In other words, every man and every woman is a star. With thy wilt shall be the whole of the law. Do that, and no other shall say nay. And to improve the human race in every conceivable way, so we have the greatest possible variety of the best instruments. So we've essentially gone from I'm doing it to me to I'm enabling it for the rest of mankind around me. These two phrases have your magical formula, which is the key alike of invocation and trance, and remind you to make way of the magician by the right ordering of every star. The pitfall in making your universe as vast as possible is getting confused when you see a tiny bit of God and trying to make that work below the abyss. Use science because it will help lead to mastery. Don't misunderstand yourself. The self you know is not the real thing. And remember, duality is fake, so don't let your rational mind get you stuck in questions and answers and trying to be all logical and stuff. So from here, I thought it'd be fun to look at the Book of Lies, which has a ridiculous number of references to mastery, all of which we will not be covering today. So here's a selection, but not the whole thing, from the glowworm. Wendy, will you read this for us, please?
Okay. Concerning the Holy Three in Naught, Nuit, Hadit, Rahor, Quit, only to be understood by the master of the temple. They are above the abyss and contain all contradiction in themselves. Below them is a seeming duality of chaos and Babylon. These are called father and mother, but it is not so. They are called brother and sister, but it is not so. They are called husband and wife, but it is not so. The reflection of all is Pan. The night of Pan is the annihilation of the all. Cast down through the abyss is the light, the rosy cross, the rapture of union that destroys, that is the way. The rosy cross is the ambassador of Pan. How infinite is the distant form, this to that. Yet all is here and now, nor is there any there or then, for all that is, what is but a manifestation, that is. Is there another line?
Yeah, sorry. A part, that is, of falsehood of that which is not. Sorry, so you have a furry friend who might be helping obscure the text there.
It was actually my cursor that had moved as the menu came up. I couldn't see it.
So I picked this chunk of this particular section of the Book of Lies because it refers to a number of concepts that are introduced in this essay on mastery, right? The reference to mastery is only in the term master of the temple, but there's this explanation of above the abyss and all the contradictions and below the abyss and the seeming duality. We call it, this, but that's not true. We call it this other thing, right? It's not really the duality that we're trying to make it into. And Crowley explains the reflection of all is Pan, and the night of Pan is the annihilation of all. So you can think about this as also a dividing line between what we call the real and unreal parts of the soul, or above and below the abyss, or any one of the number of other pairs of ways there are to describe that. So the commentary explains that Pan is a generic name. It's the whole everything manifested. And if you're above the abyss, you live in the night of Pan, because in order to get above the abyss, everything has to be annihilated, right? To cross the abyss, you give up your knowledge. You let go of Doth, that the Sephiroth, the faux Sephiroth that represents knowledge. You pour every last bit of your blood out into the cup of Babylon and give up everything that you have down here in order to go up there. Up and down being just terms for convenience, not actually representing a reality. So the master of the temple then is said to live in the night of Pan, because those who are above the abyss, like the master of the temple, lives in the night of Pan. Now we're below the abyss, the manifested part of the master of the temple. So, the meat suit goof with the stuff that lives here in the ego, reaches samadhi as the way of annihilation. So you have a chance while you are below the abyss to get a glimpse of what is above the abyss, if that makes sense. So since we read 11, we had to take a look at the Garat. And a Garat is like a wire on a string that you strangle somebody with, or a string that you strangle somebody with. So Nick, will you take this one, please? This is the whole thing, by the way. I didn't chop off the bottom.
It moves from motion into rest, and rests from rest into motion. These it does always, for time is not, so that it does neither of these things. It does that one thing which we must express by two things, neither of which possesses any rational meaning. Yet its doing, which is no doing, is simple and yet complex, is neither free nor necessary. For all these ideas express relation, and it, comprehending all relation, is its simplicity, is out of all relation even with itself. All this is true and false, and it is true and false to say that it is true and false. Strain forth thine intelligence, O man, O worthy man, O chosen of it to apprehend the discourse of the master, for thus thy reason shall at last break down as the fetter is struck from a slave's throat.
All this is true and false, and it is true and false to say that it is true and false. What's up with that?
Can I say something?
Yeah.
This really reminds me of the last episode of Star Trek, The Next Generation, when Q is telling Picard about trying to give him a clue about how to stop the anomaly. And he says, you did it before, you're doing it right now, you'll do it yet again. Picard is like, what sort of meaningless double talk is this?
I love it. So if you're reading the Book of Lies, which I highly recommend you pick up these few essays if you're interested in the topic of mastery. They are available online, and the commentary is also online. However, the actual physical book is still not that difficult to find in print for a reasonable amount of dollars. The Book of Lies was not, even though things are in order, right? There's a chapter 1 and there's a chapter 2. And notice I put chapter 11 up before I put chapter 31 up. This is not the type of book that's like a novel where you're supposed to read the chapters in order necessarily. There's a little bit of chaos, divinely inspired or no, in the organization of this text. You'll see, for example, that the comments to this chapter specifically tell you in that 4th paragraph, you should compare it to chapter 11. You're like, well, wait, that was 20 chapters ago. What the hell? So I recommend that if you are going to pick up the Book of Lies, that you sort of give it a spin through, but then choose the subject you want to read about, or the word that you are curious about, or the thing you want to know, and follow that thing throughout the entire book and the comments. Because sometimes you may discover that the chapter didn't seem to be about a thing, but then you read the comments and it's really about that thing. So here, again, the sort of explanation, right? Strain forth thine intelligence to apprehend the discourse of the master, for thus thy reason shall at last break down, right? This mental construct that's one of our obstacles to mastery, according to Crowley, that we have to get stuck in this duality thing. Notice that this entire chapter is full of things that we think of as pairs, right? Doing and not doing, simple and complex. And for each of these pairs, it is both things. So if we can say that reason is situated in doth, that fake Sephiroth of knowledge that kind of hangs out in the abyss, and if you think about that as corresponding to human anatomy, right? It's between your head and your heart, so it's your throat. That's where the title of the chapter comes from, right? The Garat. So the idea is if you let that go, if you're like, okay, I get it. I'm not supposed to make everything seem logical and forthright and have an if and a then and a why and a because. If you can let go of that obstacle, then you become unfettered by it and you have better access or access at all. The influence of the supernals, no longer inhibited by death, can descend upon Tifereth, your heart, where your human will is situated, and flood it with the ineffable light. So if you think of those three supernals as being that, the little spark of God that then says, hey, maybe I should go explore some stuff, that then says, okay, now I'm going to figure out how to incarnate you so you can explore stuff. By letting go of reason, you can begin to explore those things. So as much as it pains me, I cannot logic my way across the abyss. I got to let it go. If you're in that position too, I sympathize with you. Right. Go ahead.
Is this the same principle of a koan? Like, what is the sound of one hand clapping? You're just not supposed to be able to get it.
I would say yes, but I would also caution that I am not an expert on Zen Buddhism or the concept of revolution of koans. If anyone else is or knows more than I do, which is like, I only know this much, feel free to pipe up. All right, last little chunk. Jeff, you get this one for obvious reasons.
Cool. Proof is only possible in mathematics, and mathematics is only a matter of arbitrary conventions. And yet doubt is a good servant, but a bad master, a perfect mistress, but a nagging wife. White is white, lash of the overseer. White is black is the watchword of the slave. The master takes no heed.
This is just a portion of this chapter, but it's talking again about that logic and doubt. And I love the idea of doubt as a servant. Doubt is a good servant. It's something that you, as a master, will employ. Remember that one of the concepts of master, or one of the original concepts that we went through as a noun, is someone who has control over some thing or someone or the actions of another. And here, if you can make doubt your servant, but not allow it to become your master, right? You're not working at the bid of doubt. Doubt is working at your bid, and you can tell it, no, we're done, go away, kill yourself. I also like the idea that it's a good mistress. You can hang out with doubt and like have some fun with it, but you don't want to be married to doubt because that's just no good. All right. So mastery and masters, I thought, surely there must be like a shit ton of stuff in the Bible, right? And we knew that Crowley grew up in a household where he largely had the Bible to read. Might have been the King James Version, but probably he had the Darby Bible because that's what his church was into, the Plymouth Brethren. So I thought surely there must be a bunch of stories in the Bible that are explicitly about masters and mastery. So I'm going to go look them up. And I whipped out my online Darby Bible and I found one. And interestingly, it's in the book of Daniel. Now, you may be familiar with the book of Daniel for the only story anybody knows, which is when they try to feed the Christians to the lions, and the lions are like, yeah, dude, we're not eating you. And then the king commanded, and they took the people who had pointed to Daniel and said, the lions should eat Daniel. And they're like, yeah, the lions didn't want to eat Daniel. They want to eat you. So the king commanded, and they brought these men who had accused Daniel and cast them into the den of lions, them, their children, and their wives. And the lions had the mastery of them and broke all their bones in pieces ere they came to the bottom of the den. So apparently having mastery over something can also mean eating it. And literally, that is all there was in the Darby Bible about mastery. So I thought I'd turn to the holy books and see what I could come up with. And I came up with a lot, so we can just sort of flip through these. And what I was interested in looking at here was not the whole story or what's being told in that whole section of the holy book, but how the word is used. Right? Because we had a whole essay about mastery and about, it's the aim of expanding your universe and then like having perfect control over it. But we also have the idea of master and mastery as it's used in the Oxford English Dictionary. We have someone else being in a master relationship, right? My darling, my lord, my master. And then we have the speaker in the next verse saying, I am the master of the secret things. So someone who has obtained mastery over the secret things. In Liber Zadi, there is one reference to mastery and to masters, and that is they, in this context, my adepts and disciples, shall be masters of majesty and might. They shall be beautiful and joyous. They shall be clothed with victory and splendor. They shall stand upon the firm foundation. The kingdom shall be theirs. Yea, the kingdom shall be theirs. And just to point out quickly, if you look at beauty and joy, victory and splendor, foundation and kingdom, these are all points on the tree of life diagram that obviously all have symbolic representations and all these sorts of things. So something to think about. All right, we have here another reference to the servants of the master. So a master is someone who has others serving. This chunk of the Book of the Law, I put all 5 verses down. This is from book 2, because these are the only 2 verses that use the word master. And so I thought it would be interesting to see them and see what connects them. Wendy, will you read these 6 verses for us, please? Oh, you're on mute, babe.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, good.
60. Therefore, strike hard and low, and to hell with them, master. 61. There is a light before thine eyes, O prophet, a light undesired, most desirable. 62. I am uplifted in thine heart, and the kisses of the stars rain hard upon thy body. 63. Thou art exhaust in the voluptuous fullness of the inspiration. The expiration is sweeter than death, more rapid and laughterful than a caress of hell's own worm. 64. Oh, thou art overcome. We are upon thee. Our delight is all over thee. Hail, hail, prophet of Nu, prophet of Had, prophet of Rahor Ku. Now rejoice. Now come in our splendor and rapture. Come in our passionate peace and write sweet words for the kings. 65. I am the master. Thou art the holy chosen one.
So I thought this was interesting. Since we don't interpret the Book of the Law for one another, I will leave you to ponder these 6 verses together, beginning with speaking to someone else, to hell with them, master, and ending with a declaration, I am the master. In Liber Tetragrammaton, Liber Trigrammaton, there are 2 trigrams, that refer to master. The first is number 9. And the master of the temple, balancing all things, arose. His stature was above the heaven and below earth and hell. Above heaven, below earth and hell. Do we need to resolve the meaning of this, or can we just allow reason to go by the wayside? The master flamed forth as a star and set a guard of water in every abyss. We have a couple of other references to master. Master of the temple shows up a lot in the holy books, or magister templi. I ignored magister and went only for master and mastery when I was looking at the holy books. Obviously, that's going to show up a lot in Crowley's writings because of his experience in the Golden Dawn and with the AA. That's what you get here, master of the temple. Got it. Okay. I am the hideous God, and who mastereth me is uglier than I. So here's a reference of master as a verb, right? To take over or to best in conquest and be superior to. And then in the last, we have, therefore lift up thyself as I am lifted up. Hold thyself in as I am master to accomplish. So there's the sense of being a master, noun, but the mix of master with accomplishing the sense of that, of master as a verb. And we have a few more uses of master. O Adonai, and my master, here in verse 41. Where now is the master? Again, somebody external, and now we have someone who has the title master. In the next verse, but the master, again, speaking of someone external with the title, capital letter, master. And then the one chapter later, thou art beyond the day and the night. What's beyond the day and the night? I am thyself, O my maker, my master, my mate. Notice Crowley's fun use of alliteration there, along with I am thyself, which is not an ordinary English construction by any means. Further in this book, we have, again, reference to O my master, a role that someone or something is playing. My master, and the sign of the master, and the name of my master. So again, those external references to someone else as being in the position of master. In Liber Aurita, we have a reference to the double power in the voice of the master. So voice of the master is a compound noun, bigger concept. And then in chapter 5, we have the laughter of the masters of the temple abashed him not, nor was he ashamed hearing the laughter of the little dogs of hell, for he abode in his place, and his falsehood was truth in his place. The little dogs cannot correct him, for they can do naught but bark. The masters cannot correct him, for they say, come and see. So fun for me anyway to see, we have this mixture of falsehood and truth here in verse 3. So what I'm hoping you see when I throw out these snips of the word that is the title of the essay or related to the title of the essay in the holy books is that these same concepts that are embedded in the essays with this title are also embedded in the holy books where these words are employed. Okay, because this is the star ruby and it's symbolic that there's red and there's blue, if you're familiar with the star ruby, I had to use this picture because we have red hard hat and a blue hard hat, and that's just kind of perfect. At the head of the altar, gold, and twin images in green of the capital M master. Also, the altar shall fume before the master with incense that hath no smoke. So we have a fume that's not smoky. Then again, the master shall speak as he will soft words, and with music and what else, he will bring forward the victim, capital V. Then shall the master appear as he, capital H, should appear in his, capital H, glory. Here's what I looked at to get ready for class tonight. Little essays toward truth, holy books with Alima, Confessions, The Big Blue Brick, The Book of Lies, the OED, Oxford Languages Online, which is not the OED. I get my Darby Bible online at BibleStudyTools.com, and I looked at a bunch of websites and quotations. So thank you all for taking the time to come to class tonight. Again, if you're not a member of Sekhet Maat, we would genuinely appreciate your donation of $10 or whatever strikes your fancy. If you are joining us by YouTube, don't forget that you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you can also go to our website and subscribe to the email list so that you get notification of upcoming events that during this lockdown time of the fun coronavirus pandemic are all happening online. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen. We can move into a